Today, we are talking about one of the biggest hidden risks of owning property in the Philippines. It's not a scam, it's not fake titles, and not corrupt agents. Hey family, in today's video, I'm going to talk about another shocking reality in the Philippines. Something that doesn't just happen to foreigners. In fact, many Pinoys with properties experience this problem all the time. Imagine this. You finally buy a land in the Philippines. Maybe it's a farm, maybe a beach land, maybe a retirement property for your future, but you live abroad. So you ask your spouse's cousin or your neighbor or your trusted family friend to watch over the land. At first, everything is good. They clean the property, they plant trees, they build a small house, which is a temporary shelter made of wood, and you permitted them because they are caretakers. You trust them and you want them to be comfortable and convenient while watching your property. And then they tell everyone in the barangay, guys, this is actually our land. 10 years later, you come back and suddenly they refuse to leave. You hear a rumor or a chismis, something terrifying. People are saying, actually, under Philippine law, they may now have rights to the land. And this is where things get very dangerous. Today, we are talking about one of the biggest hidden risks of owning property in the Philippines. It's not scam, it's not fake titles, and not corrupt agents, but caretakers, relatives, and informal occupants. And why so many foreigners, and especially Filipinos, lose years, money, and peace because of land disputes. Let's talk about the truth. Now, first, let's clarify something very important. There is a very common belief in the Philippines that if someone stays on your land for minimum 10 years, they automatically own the property. That statement is not actually exactly true, but it's also not completely false. And this is why the issue becomes so confusing and so dangerous. The real legal concept behind this is called acquisitive prescription or adverse possession. So basically, under certain situations, somebody who openly occupies land for a long period of time may eventually claim rights over it. But the law was originally meant for very specific situations, like, for example, abandoned land, unclear ownership, untitled property, inherited property with no formal transfer, land nobody actively manages. So the intention was not to allow your caretaker or an illegal settler to steal your property. But in reality, that's where things become messy because in the Philippines, especially in provinces and rural areas, ownership is often informal. A lot of lands has old titles, has multiple heirs, has unclear boundaries, has handshake agreements, has no written contracts, or taxes haven't been updated for years. And once someone has stayed there long enough, they built, even if it's just a temporary structure, like a structure that they didn't even spend a dime on building it. It's just a really temporary structure, like a kubo, let's say, made of wood. If someone has paid taxes other than you, the owner, or convinced local people that they are the real occupant, that there is when the disputes begin. And then welcome to the Philippine court system. And that's where your real nightmare starts. So this topic is especially important for foreigners because I know many foreigners buying properties in the Philippines are not physically living here full time. This happens a lot to OFWs, overseas Filipino workers. So what do? They assign a caretaker, usually a spouse's relative, a brother-in-law, a cousin, a family friend, a barangay acquaintance, or someone trusted by the family. And this is where emotions start mixing with business. The biggest mistake people make is assuming that the family would never do that to me. But remember, guys, land changes people, money changes people, especially in provinces where land values suddenly increase. What used to be a cheap farmland can suddenly become a subdivision area, a commercial property, a tourism land, or a land worth millions of pesos. Now, imagine someone has been living there for 10 or 15 years. They built a small house, like I said, a small nipa hut, temporary structure. Their children grew up there. They planted trees. They improved the property. In their mind, They now feel emotionally entitled to it. And sometimes they start believing, we took care of this land while you were away, you were abroad. Then one day, when you decide to sell a property or you decide to develop it, you decide to finally build your dream house, suddenly the conflict starts. This is how families get destroyed. This is how marriages get destroyed as well. And this is why you hear so many horror stories in the Philippines involving land disputes. And to this day, this is still happening, especially in the far-flung provinces in Mindanao. People, relatives, families are killing each other because of lands. Now, let me say something very important. The real problem is not just the law itself. The bigger problem is slow justice, corruption, weak documentation, emotional family politics, barangay influence, and inconsistent enforcement. Because even if you are legally correct, that doesn't mean that the situation becomes easy. Some land dispute cases in the Philippines last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, even more. And during that time, they spend money on lawyers, you cannot develop the property. Buyers, of course, you will not have buyers. Titles become frozen, and the stress destroys relationships. Now, add local politics. Imagine your caretaker is related to some barangay officials or municipal employees, or maybe in the local police, or they are connected to influential families. Now, your simple land issue suddenly becomes political, and many foreigners are shocked when they realize that having the title doesn't always mean having control over the land. Like, the title is not an assurance, especially if you are living abroad, especially if nobody is actively managing the land. And even if someone you appoint that is actively managing the land, it can still happen. And also, especially if the occupants have established themselves publicly over many years. That is why the issue becomes extremely dangerous, not because the law automatically gives away your property after 10 years, but because the legal process becomes long, expensive, emotionally exhausting, and very uncertain. Okay, so let's simplify what many people misunderstand. Just because someone stays on your land for 10 years does not automatically mean they legally own it. There are many legal conditions involved. Courts usually look at things like, was the occupation public and continuous? Did the person act like an owner? What was the land abandoned? Did the actual owner ignore the property? Were taxes being paid? Is there proof the person was only a caretaker? Is the land titled or untitled? And this is where the things become vague because it looks like just excuses. And even if you have the deed of sale from an attorney, most of the time it's not enough. Every case is also different. One judge may interpret facts differently from another. And because court cases move very ultra slow in the Philippines, many disputes become wars of endurance. Who runs out of money first? Who gets tired first? Who gives up first? That's the reality many people don't talk about. Actually, even if the person who occupied your land is actually not fighting, not attending court hearings, the court is not going to drop the case just like that. So it doesn't matter if you are correct or you are in the wrong. You will still suffer. So if you plan to buy property in the Philippines, especially if you're a foreigner, what should you do? This is not an expert advice. I am just going to state the most practical and most logical. If you have common sense, a foreigner, if you want to live in the Philippines, these are the things you really need to do. First, never rely purely on verbal agreements. If someone is staying on your property as a caretaker, make written agreements, clarify they are not owners, specify temporary occupancy, define responsibilities clearly. It doesn't matter if it's your family, if it's someone's very close to you, do this. Second, pay your property taxes consistently. If you can pay it by yourself, like you are the one who's going to pay going to the office and then you pay it there, that is better. Don't always rely on your caretaker paying the property for you, paying the taxes for you, because sometimes the trust is where your nightmare begins. Third, visit and inspect your property regularly. You should make yourself known in the neighborhood. You should make the locals know you, that you are the one who owned that property. Fourth, document everything. Photos, messages, contracts, payments, caretaker agreements, everything. Fifth, be very careful mixing land ownership with family politics. Sometimes the biggest risks are not strangers. Most of the time, it's the people closest to you, especially family and relatives. That is the case here in the Philippines. Almost all the time, it's family, it's relatives. And finally, work only with real professionals, real lawyers, real licensed brokers, real documentation. Because when disputes begin in the Philippines, things can get ugly very fast. And the reality here in the Philippines is that land disputes are one of the most common and most painful problems. So before you buy land here, understand the culture, understand the legal system. The legal system and the culture, it's always mixed. Okay. The culture, it applies to politics. It applies to laws even. Sometimes the laws get bypassed because of politics and the culture. So if you enjoyed this video and want more honest discussion about the Philippines, subscribe and let me know in the comments section. What do you think about it? Have you guys experienced a land dispute in the Philippines or in your own country? Or do you know anyone who is going through land dispute in the Philippines? Because I guarantee many people watching this have stories to tell. I'll see you guys in the next one.